Hello, I'm Doug Watches. Welcome to the Locksmith DVD training program. In this course, we will discuss the features and characteristics of the Medeco lock. There are a number of companies that make high security locks, including Medeco, Schlage, Multi-Lock, Sargent, Corbin Russwin, Lori Lock, and others. To meet UL 437 standards for a high security lock, the lock must meet the following requirements. In general, all of the working parts must be constructed of high-grade, corrosion-resistant materials or have protective finishes. Have at least 1,000 possible key combinations. Function for at least 10,000 cycles. And the lock must be resistant to picking and physical attacks. It is also important to have control over the key blanks. Of course, the best way to have control over the blanks is to have patent protection. Medeco is probably the most well-known of the high-security lock manufacturers. Medeco's anti-picking and anti-drilling features have made it a legend in the field of high-security locks. Two of Medeco's major patents have expired, which has made some of the once restricted key blanks available to the general public. Therefore, it is now easier to service many of the Medeco products. For all of these reasons, I have chosen the Medeco lock as our subject for the study of high security locks. Many of the Medeco terms, like Medeco, Medeco 3, Biaxial, Keymark, and others, are trademark terms, and their use in this video is only to describe the items so named by Medeco. Medeco is a very large company and makes a variety of locks for just about every application. It will not be possible to cover all of them. In this course, we will focus on the original Medeco, the Biaxial Medeco, and the Medeco 3 locks. This course is divided into 12 parts. Part 1, Tools. Part 2, Theory of Operation. Part 3, Features of Medeco. Part 4, Medeco Biaxial Lock. Part 5, Inside the Medeco 3. Part 6, Rekeying the Medeco 3. Part 7, Medeco Bi-Level Locks. Part 8, Key Control Programs. Part 9, Selling Medeco. Part 10, Cutting Medeco Keys. Part 11, Drilling Medeco. And Part 12, Suggested Practice. After viewing this video, you should be able to do the following. You should be familiar with the tools needed to service Medeco locks. Explain the operational theory of Medeco locks. Recognize the basic design and features of Medeco locks. Be able to rekey a Medeco lock. Be able to cut a Medeco key. Be familiar with the Medeco key control programs. Recognize opportunities to sell Medeco locks. And know how to drill a Medeco lock. The basic tools that you'll need to work on Medeco locks: you're going to need a key gauge. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, and they make a nice little screwdriver that also has an Allen wrench on the other end that fits the Medeco set screws. That's nice to have. A pair of tweezers, a little spanner wrench. Some of the locks have a tailpiece that you need a spanner wrench to get the tailpiece off. And then they make a little tool to push off the spring covers off of some of their locks. The ones that don't use set screws would have spring covers that this little tool can be used to push off. Another tool that we're going to need is a Medeco pin kit. They have different size kits, and I will warn you that these kits are expensive. A kit this size probably would sell for upwards of $1,100 or more at the current time. There's 100 of the pins of the bottom pins in this kit. The pins are kind of expensive. That's just something to be aware of. Now, they do make smaller kits. This is a smaller kit. I believe there's 30 bottom pins provided in this kit, and depending on how much work you intend to do, this could possibly be a good place to start. This kit probably sells upwards of just over $300 at the current time. Another tool that we're going to need, or certainly would be nice to have, is the technical service manual from Medeco. So try to contact a Medeco rep and see if you can buy, or they will give you one of these technical service manuals for the Medeco lock. Medeco 10 through 50 series locks incorporate the basic concept of a pin tumbler lock, a plug inside a shell which rotates. However, the Medeco lock incorporates a sidebar as a second locking point. For the sidebar to release, the bottom pins, which contain slots, must be rotated to the correct position for the slots to accept the sidebar legs. The rotation of the pins is made possible by using bottom pins cut with chisel points. In 1986, a different bottom pin was introduced, which is known as a biaxial pin. I'll explain the difference in a moment. The original Medeco lock, which was introduced in 1968, had two locking points: the normal shear line of the pin tumbler and the locking point created by the sidebar. During the course, we will see that a later lock known as Medeco 3 introduced a third locking point. I wanted something a little larger to demonstrate how the Medeco bottom pins work, so I have a block of wood with some grooves cut in it to represent a key, and we will use this plastic rod for a bottom pin. Medeco came up with the idea that they could make cuts at an angle and force the bottom pins to rotate. They use three different angles. Holding the key with the bow to your left and looking down on the top of the key, you can read the angles. As you see here, the angles will be either left angle, center angle, or right angle. Those are the three different angles: left, center, or right. To force the pins into the correct position, they chiseled off the ends of the bottom pins so that when the spring pushes the pin down into the cut, it will rotate. So as the key comes underneath the pin, it will come down and it will rotate like this. Now the lock uses a sidebar, and the bottom pins have a groove, which I have here just a blue mark to represent the groove, but they have a groove cut into them that the groove must be in the correct position to accept one of the legs off of the sidebar. And if it's not, the sidebar cannot recess into the plug and the lock will not open. So the key must be cut so that it will raise the pin to the shear line and also turn the pin so that the sidebar groove is lined up with the sidebar leg. And that's how the Medeco pin works. The original Medeco pin was chiseled. It was not round, it was not a conical pin, which was standard in most pin tumbler locks up to this time. And by having the chiseled edges on the pin could be forced to rotate by the key. If the cut on the key was angled, it would force the pin to rotate to that angle. The pin also had a slot for a sidebar. So the pin had to be rotated in such a way that the sidebar slot would line up with the legs of the sidebar. Now, to make sure that the pin didn't flip completely around 180 degrees and the slot would be on the wrong side, they added a locator tab that would keep the pin from doing that. In the plug, there will be a small slot that this locator tab could move back and forth in and the pin could rotate. And we'll see all of this later on actual locks. But again, this is the original idea with the Medeco lock. In 1986, Medeco took this concept a step further with the development of their biaxial pins. As you can see, with the biaxial pin, the cut is much more radical on the end of the pin. When this is placed in the groove of the key, you can see that the pin will no longer center in the bottom of the cut. It's off to one side. Okay, this causes the actual center of the pin, and the actual center would be where the sidebar cut is. But this pushes the center of the pin either forward or back by 31 thousandths of an inch. And it could be cut to work on either side of the groove. We're going to see it. They have pins for both sides. So depending on if the offset pushes the center forward or backward, the pins are designated to be either 4 pins or at pins, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. Now, the biaxial pins require that the keys be cut either forwards or backwards to fit the specific pin. So the cut's not going to be in the same position as it would be for the original biaxial locks. The cuts on the key are in a different location, and there's going to be 2 possible cuts for each chamber, either a fore cut or an aft cut. And again, we'll talk about that more later in the course also. We have an original Medeco pin on the left side and then a biaxial pin on the right side. These are both for a right cut on the key. You can see with the biaxial pin how much more is chiseled off. And that's because this pin is a biaxial pin, and they have to chisel enough off to make it either a fore pin or an aft pin. That wasn't necessary with the original pins. So if you look at the ends of them, you're going to tell right away if it's biaxial pin or not. With the development of the biaxial pin, locksmiths were forced to buy new pin kits to work with the Medeco locks. Now, the biaxial pins will work with Medeco's new lock, which is called Medeco 3, but they will not work with the original locks. As we get started working with the Medeco locks, please look for the following features. The features that make the lock pick resistant are chisel point pins that must be lifted and rotated, a sidebar, false sidebar notches in the bottom pins, the use of pick resistant top pins, and with the Medeco 3 lock, a slider provides a third locking point. The following features make the lock drill resistant: 4 hardened steel pins in the front of the plug, 2 steel crescents in the front of the shell, a steel ball bearing on the front of the sidebar, and hardened steel top pins. And as stated earlier, another very important feature is the ability to control the key blanks. We're going to look at 3 different locks that explain a little bit about the history and the development of the Medeco lock. And we're going to look at the different features in each one of these locks, and hopefully by the time we go through all 3 locks, you're going to have a good understanding of all of the features. And then once we do that, we're going to go ahead and take the Medeco 3 lock completely apart, and we're going to rekey it to a new key. And so you'll see all of the steps in the process to rekey a Medeco lock. Okay, this is an original Medeco lock, like the ones they began producing when they first started their company in 1968. There's no type of logo really on the front of the lock. It does say it's 51 series. It has a UL rating as a high security lock. And as we'll see later, in later varieties of the lock, as the lock developed more features, they added logos to them. like you to look and see that this looks much like a normal lock. It does have the set screws in the top, which is unusual for a normal rim cylinder, but other than that, it's pretty standard. The tailpiece on the back, it has a snap ring, and it has a screw-on cap that holds the tailpiece on. So I'm going to go ahead and use the spanner wrench that we saw earlier to take off this cap that holds this tailpiece. If you don't have the spanner wrench, I'm sure you can improvise with something else. And then I'm going to pull the snap ring off, and I want to show you that this lock will come apart just like a normal rim cylinder. Okay, so I pulled the snap ring and the tailpiece off of this lock, and again, this is an original Medeco lock. We're going to go ahead and pull this out and just review the features, see what's really in here as far as components, and look at get to know the mechanics of how it works. Now there is a sidebar on the side of this, so you want to hold on to that as you take it out, and you can see I'll rotate that around right where my finger is. We're going to just drop that out of there. It has two little springs on it, so you want to hang on to the springs if you don't have any extras. And there's the sidebar. Take a close look here at the sidebar. You can see the two little springs on it, and I'll turn it so we can see the legs on it better. Those are the legs that have to go in through the gates in order for the lock to work. The primary characteristic of a Medeco lock are these bottom pins. The bottom pins are chiseled off. They're not rounded conical pins like you see in a normal pin tumbler lock. They're chiseled off, and because they're chiseled off, they can cut a key that will rotate the pin to a certain position. And as you can see here with the key in here, all of these little slots for the sidebar legs are lined up facing the sidebar slot, which is right there. And you can see the gates that the legs of the sidebar have to go through, and then they have to go into the bottom pins, the slots in the bottom pins. And if they're not lined up right, the legs are not going to be able to go in there, and the sidebar will not be recessed into the plug, and the plug will not be able to turn. So again, that's the primary feature of the Medeco lock that they got their original patent on, were these chiseled pins that could be rotated. Now on the original lock, you can see that the locator tabs face the back of the plug, whereas in later Medeco versions of their lock, the locator tabs are moved to the side, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. Now, in addition to these regular slots for the sidebar, there are also false slots on the bottom pins that make it more difficult to pick the lock, and I'll show you a close-up of that in a few moments. The other feature is the mushroom pins that for top pins that go in the top of the lock, and I'm not going to show you those right now, but I will show those in a later version of the lock. So for anti-picking, we have the chiseled pins that must be rotated. We have the sidebar slot for the sidebar. We have the false slots in there. We have mushroom pins in the top. All of that makes the lock more pick resistant. Now this is an original Medeco pin, and you can see that sidebar slot's here, and the locator tab is right here, approximately 90 degrees from the sidebar slot. It's not going to be exactly 90 degrees every time because they have 3 different pins depending on the angle of the cut of the key and so on. But if it's approximately 90 degrees, then you're going to be looking at an original Medeco pin. Okay, I want to show this false slot that's in this bottom pin for the sidebar. The way I'm holding it right now, right on top, that's the real slot for the sidebar. and it's deep enough to work. If I turn a little bit, you can see, and it's not going to be real easy to see probably on the video, but there's another slot. It's not as deep, and it's not deep enough for the sidebar leg to go all the way into. I think you can kind of see a little groove right there. And of course that's, again, is an anti-picking feature. As far as anti-drilling features, you can see in the front of the plug there's 3 hardened steel pins here to prevent drilling at the shear line, or to at least make it more difficult to drill at the shear line. And then also there's a hardened steel pin to help prevent drilling the sidebar. Now in addition to that, on the sidebar there's also a hardened steel ball bearing. Right here you have a hardened steel ball bearing on the front of the sidebar to make it more difficult to drill the sidebar. Now in addition to the pins in the front of the plug and the ball bearing on the sidebar, there are also 2 hardened steel crescents at the 12 o'clock position, and over here at the 3 o'clock position. You can see them right there, and we'll take those out on another lock, and I'll show you how to take those out and put those back in. But in addition to that, there's also hardened steel top pins in the top part of the lock to help make it more difficult to drill at the shear line. So just to review that then, the features that make it more difficult to drill, we have 4 hardened steel pins in the front of the plug, we have the steel ball bearing on the front of the sidebar, we have the steel crescents in the front of the shell of the lock, and then we have hardened steel top pins. Now I want to look at the key now, and the way to hold the key is that you hold the bow to your left and look down on the key as you're looking at the cuts in the key to determine the angle of the cuts. So always hold the bow to your left. You can see that this first one is straight across. The cut comes straight across. I think you can tell that the second cut is at an angle like that, and that would be a right cut. Number 3 is also a right cut. Number 4 is back to the left. It's a left-hand cut. And the 5th cut is back to the right. So we have one center. Number 1's the center cut, number 2 is to the right, 3 is right, 4 is left, and 5 is back to the right. Now when you go to put the plug back in the shell, you want to put the key in and get the pins turned to where the sidebar slots are in the right location. Now without having the top pins on them, you can see when you have the top pin on there and a spring on there and you have pressure on there, it'll push the pin down against the key and turn it the right way. But without the top pin, you may have to tap them a little bit, tap them down to get them to go to the right position. And then just take your finger, push the sidebar in, and then just load it back into the shell of the lock just like you would any other plug. But if it's not going in, smoothly check and see if all of the pins are turned to the right position. That's it. Okay, now this is a Medeco Biaxial lock, but you'll notice that it doesn't say Medeco up here like the last lock we looked at did. It says FA for Folger Adams. Folger Adams was part of the same family of lock companies that Medeco was for a few years, and so some of these Medeco locks were made under the Folger Adams name. But there's a logo right here. It's the Medeco Biaxial logo that tells us this is a Medeco lock. This is Medeco's logo or symbol for their biaxial locks. So if you see a symbol like this on a lock, even though it doesn't say it's a Medeco lock, that tells you that this is a Medeco Biaxial lock. You can also see it has the same 51S. It's the 51 series, and it has the Underwriters Laboratory stamp that it is a high security lock. The tailpiece has just got 2 screws holding it on. I'm going to pull the two screws out, take the tailpiece off, and we'll pull the plug out, and we're going to look at a couple of differences between this and the original lock. So I've taken the tailpiece off this lock. We have the key. We're going to just go ahead and pull the plug out of this lock and take a look at it. Again, you want to hold on to the sidebar when you're doing this to make sure that it doesn't come flying off and you lose your springs. Also keep that follower tight against the plug all the way through there so that your steel crescents don't fall out. Now this lock has the same basic features of the original Medeco lock. Notice the 3 hardened pins here in the 12 o'clock position. Notice the pin here protecting the sidebar. The sidebar has a steel ball bearing on it. That's all the same. It has mushroom pins in the top of the lock. It has the hardened steel pins to help make it drill resistant. The main difference is here in the bottom pin. The bottom pin is now what's called a biaxial pin, and we'll look at some close-ups on this to explain it. But one thing right off you can notice is that the locator tab is now on the side of the plug. As you can see, there's a little notch here for the locator tab. So that's a difference with the biaxial pin. Okay, so I'm going to put the plug back in there, just like we did in the last one. And again, we would normally use the set screws, and we'll show that with the next lock. We take those out to load the pins in normally. Looking at the drawing in the Medeco Technician's Manual, we can see the biaxial pin, the slot for the sidebar. We can see the false sidebar slot. We have the locator tab. If you hold the pin so the top is up and you're looking at the slot for the sidebar, you can see that the slot for the sidebar, or the center of the pin, is before the major part of the chisel cut. So it's going to be called a 4-pin. In this drawing in the manual, we can see that an aft pin, the center part of the pin, or the slot for the sidebar, is after the major part of the chisel cut, which is going to establish it as an aft pin. Now, if you're not sure which pin you have, just hold it so that the top is up and you're facing the groove for the sidebar leg, which is going to be the center of the pin. And if the center of the pin comes after the chisel part of the pin, then it's an aft pin. Now here we can see the center of the pin is before most of the chisel. So this is going to be a 4-pin. This is a spacing chart for the key, the cuts of the key, which are included in the manual. And as you can see, it's different from a normal key, that we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possible cuts, and there's a different measurement for if it's a 4-cut or an aft cut. For each cut, there's 2 possible positions to cut that number 1 cut. If it's a 4-pin that's going to be used, we're going to make the cut at 213 thousandths from the shoulder, and if it's an aft pin we're going to use, the cut will center at 275 thousandths. For a number 2 pin, the number 2 chamber, if we use a 4-pin, then the cut will center at 383 thousandths from the shoulder, an aft cut 445. With the biaxial program, where there's going to be more possible cut positions, more possible pin positions, because instead of just a left, center, and right, we now have 2 possible positions on the key depending if it's a 4-pin or an aft pin. So again, always look at the key with the bow to your left, looking down on the top of the key. If it's a 4-pin, they've given the letters to the different cuts and different pins as K, B, and Q. If it's an aft pin, they've assigned the letters MDS, M, D, and S. So these would be for your aft pins. This will be for your 4 pins. Now we'll see that in the pin kit. We're going to rekey a Medeco 3 lock, and I'm going to show you exactly how to decode the key, and we're going to do an example. We're going to pull the pins, and so you're going to see all of this as we go through the course here. But for right now, I just need to make the point of these different letter designations and what they refer to. When pinning a Medeco lock, another consideration is the maximum adjacent cut between each space, or the max. And it's not a standard number for Medeco, depending on which pins are next to each other. If you have a K pin, 2 K pins next to each other, you have a max of 3. But if you have a M next to a K, the max is only 2. If you have a B pin next to an M, the max is 4. So this is another consideration when repinning a Medeco biaxial lock. Okay, now this is the Medeco 3, and we can see an M with a little 3 by it. We can see the UL stamp on it. This is out of a deadbolt, but the features in here will be basically the same for any of the locks that have the M3, the Medeco 3. This lock has all of the features of the original Medeco. It has all of the features of the biaxial Medeco, and it has an additional feature, which is a slider that is in this lock here that is new. And this lock, I believe this lock came out in 2007. I know that their patent is good on this lock through 2021. So they have a protected keyway up until 2021. They have control over the keyway. So that's one of the main features of any high security lock, is being able to control who can make the key blanks and provide key blanks to the customers. Okay, we'll look at the keys here in just a minute. We have a couple of keys here to look at. You'll notice that this one here has got the M3 on it, but you'll also notice up here that it looks different. There's a piece right here this key doesn't have, and this is to push the new slider width that's in the M3. The biaxial and the original Medeco do not have this feature. So as soon as you see a key with a little piece like this on it protruding out, you know you're dealing with Medeco 3, and it's going to have a slider in it. The keyway is slightly wider here, and the key is slightly thicker. We're going to take the lock apart by pulling out the set screws, and we're going to line up each one of the pin stacks so we can see the pin stacks, and then we're going to actually rekey this lock to a new key. You can see on the back the tail piece is a little different on this deadbolt. We have, again, 2 screws that hold it on, and it's a little bit different tail piece. Again, this is for a deadbolt. Okay, we'll go ahead and use our little Medeco tool, little screwdriver and Allen wrench tool, and we'll take the tail piece off. So that's the tail piece. Put that aside. Then we're going to go ahead and just pull the pins out, and we'll start with the number 1 pin up here. Take the set screw out. dump it out. That one doesn't want to come out of there. See if we put the key in there, if it'll help push it out. There we go. So go ahead and put those aside. And we're going to do all 6 chambers like that. Okay, this is a Medeco 3 lock, so as we pull this out, we're going to have a sidebar as well as a slider. And so just to make sure everything stays put, I'm going to kind of just wrap my fingers around that. And then of course we got our 2 hardened steel crescents just came out. I'm going to go ahead and take the sidebar out. I also want to show you how the key catches the slider right here. So the key goes in it. Notice this part of the key right here. You see it's right against the slider right now. And so it's going to push it back as I push that in there, see? And it's going to, of course with the spring there, it's going to spring back. And when you take your slider out, I will tell you that the slider spring is the spring that's most apt to get away from you. So if you don't have backup springs, you want to really hold on to it very carefully. Go ahead and just kind of take a probe and use a pick or whatever, lift it up a little bit, take it out gently and make sure the little spring doesn't get away from you. Now here we can see the gates in the plug where the sidebar goes, and once the bottom pins line up properly, the legs of the sidebar can slide through the gates and the sidebar can slide inside the plug and allow the plug to turn. And turning it on around, we have the location of the slider. So the slider fits in here. I'm not going to put this little spring in there just yet. I'll put the slider in there, and then you can see here how the legs on the slider block these 2 gates, and then as the key pushes it in, it will open up the gates so the slide bar can go through there. So you'll see that would be the locked position, and then unlocked would be pushed up. So that's how the slider works. With this drawing, we can see the new gates that were put into the sidebar. So as the key goes in and the sidebar recesses into the plug, the slider tabs will not interfere with the sidebar. So that's one way you can tell a Medeco 3 sidebar from a regular biaxial sidebar, or the gates in the sidebar. Okay, this is a Medeco 3 sidebar, and you can see these spaces here, these 2 little open spaces in the sidebar that were put there for the Medeco 3. And the reason that they had to put these in the sidebar is when the sidebar recesses into the plug, there has to be a place for the locking tabs on the slider to be at, and so as not to interfere with the sidebar. So when this goes in, it actually fits around, these gates fit around the locking tabs on the slider. And if they weren't there, then the sidebar would not go in far enough for the lock to open. Okay, here you can see the pin stacks out of our lock, and you can see that they look just like pin stacks out of any other lock basically, except for the bottom pins are chiseled. Now you will notice on the top pins we had 2 mushroom pins in chambers 2 and 5. We had mushroom pins. We have 1 hardened steel pin, a hardened steel top pin. So those are the pin stacks that we had in our lock. Okay, now just like in any rekeying project, the first thing we're going to have to do is measure the cuts of the key. And we're going to go ahead and do that, and then with the Medeco key we have a couple of other things we're going to have to measure. We're going to have to measure the angle of the cuts. Are they left, right, or center cuts? And then we're going to have to measure for the sidebar. Now, this is just like measuring any other key, except that if it's an angle cut, you need to let the key blank angle a little bit. You can't just hold it straight and get an accurate measurement. So if you have an angle cut, let your key angle. It's not going to be perpendicular to the key gauge. So our first one we can see is a 4. The next cut that we have, our number 2 cut, is a 2. Third cut is a 6. Fourth cut is a 4. The fifth cut is also a 4. And the last cut, the 6th chamber, is a 6. So we have 4, 2, 6, 4, 4, 6. Okay, now let's read the angle of the cuts of the key. And again, looking down on it with the bow on the left, we can see that the first cut is a center cut. It's right here. The second cut is also a center cut. The third cut is to the left. The fourth cut is a center cut. The fifth cut is a right angle cut. It goes like this. And we can see here that the sixth cut is also a right angle cut going to the right. So again, we have center, center, left, center, right, right. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We have going across 1 to 6, 4, 2, 6, 4, 4, 6, and the angles of the cuts are center, center, left, center, right, right. Now, being that we're dealing with biaxial pins, the next job will be to measure if it's a 4-pin or an aft pin. Okay, now the way we measure to see if it's a 4-pin or an aft pin, we put the key right here on the key gauge, using the bottom shoulder to line it up with right here. It's like this. Okay, so this is the number 1 chamber here. We can see that the number 1 chamber, it's the second line that lines up with the center. Take a look at the second chamber, the second cut. You can see that here it's the first line that lines up. So the first pin is going to be an after cut pin, what's called an aft pin, and the second pin will be a 4-pin. The third is an aft. The fourth is an aft. The fifth is an aft. And the sixth, you can see the first line drops into the bottom of the cut, so it's going to be a 4-cut pin on the number 6 pin. So that's how you read the fore and aft cuts of the pins and the key cuts. So the information that we now have from our new key is we know we have the cuts of the key, and we have the angles of the cuts, and we have the information as to if it's an aft cut or a fore cut. We can see there we got aft, fore, aft, 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 fore. The next thing that we're going to need to measure is for the slider. Is it a 1 through 6 slider? And there's a scale here in the bottom right corner of the gauge to measure your key for the slider. Okay, so if we look right here, you see the end of the slider comes how far out? It comes to the second line, which is the number 5. So we're looking right down here at this little piece that protrudes on the side of the key and pushes the slider back. So that's how you measure for your slider. Okay, now I'm going to just use the picture of the key gauge that's in the Medeco manual to show the letter designations for the cuts, because on the key gauge itself it's so shiny that these do not show up real good in the video. But on the key gauge you have these notations to designate either fore or aft pin, and then the letter designation for either left, right, or center cut. Now, our first chamber was a center cut, and it was an aft pin. So we're going to be over here, and it's obviously a letter D. So the first one was a D. The second cut was a center cut, and it was a 4 pin. So it's going to be, again, center right here, it's going to be a B. The third chamber was a left cut, and it was an aft pin. So the left cut would be this one going this way, and it's going to be the letter M. The fourth cut was an aft pin. It was a center cut, and therefore letter designation is D. The fifth cut was an aft pin, and it was a right angle cut, so it's going to be an S. And the last cut was a 4 pin, and it was also a right angle cut, but the letter designation will be Q. So that's how we get the letter designations for the pins that we're going to pull from the pin kit. So now we have all of the information that we need to pull our pins with. The first pin is going to be a 4D. The second chamber is going to be a 2B, then a 6M, a 4D, a 4S, and a 6Q, and the pins should be right to match the cuts on the key. Okay, so I have my pin kit here, and we're going to look at the back of the pin kit first, where we have the chart that indicates what's in each one of the bins. And the bottom pins are in these first 6 rows. We have a row of K pins, M, B, D, Q, and S. So for example, if it's a number 1 cut with a K and you want a K pin, then you would go to this bin right here. If it's a number 3 cut and it's a D, you would go here. Maybe it's a number 5 cut with an M. Right here would be for the 5M. So each one of the chambers, there's a possible of 6 different cuts, and a possibility of, for each cut, there's a possibility of 6 different pins, because you have 3 angles, left, center, and right, and then you have fore and aft. So there's a possibility of 6 pins for each cut. So this is how you look and find out which bin we're going to have to go to pull the pin. On the other side over here we have springs, we have our master pins, we have our top pins, set screws, a place for sidebars, and miscellaneous parts for the locks. Okay, so here you can see the bottom of the pin kit with all of the pins and so on. We have, again, the bottom pins. The first row was number 1 K. The number 1 pin depths are all the way across. These are number 2 pins, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And over here we have our springs, we have master pins, we have top pins, we have set screws, sidebars, we have our caps for different locks, we have miscellaneous springs and crescents and so on, and just a bin for little tools and parts and so on. Now remember that our cuts, our first cut was a 4D. So to pull that pin, we come to row number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we go over to here. This is the D pin. So we'll take out one of those. That's going to be the number 1 cut. I'm going to lay it aside. The number 2 chamber is a 2 cut with a B. So again, it's going to be in the 2 row, and this is a B pin right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out for us, put it aside. third chamber, 6M. So we know it's going to be in the 6th row, and it's going to be this pin right here. This is 6M. Fifth one is a 4D. We're going to go to the 4th row. We're going to go across to the 4th bin. That's the D bin. Pull that pin. The next one will be a 4S. Again, back in the 4th row. And it's going to be all the way over to one of these. Put that one of those aside. And the last one that we're going to need is a 6Q. And Q is this bin here. This is the 6 cut row, and this is a Q. Okay, now these are our top pins here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll notice that the number 1 top pins are longer, and they continually get shorter. 2 shorter, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all shorter, so that you have a balanced stack. So that if you pull the number 1 bottom pin, which is pretty short, then you're going to get a longer top pin. So again, now this is our set. We're going to need 4, 2, 6, 4, 4, 6. So we need 3 4s, a 2, and 2 6s. So on the number 4, again, this is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need 3 4s. I'll just go ahead and take those out. And then we're going to need 1, 2, which is this bin here. And then we're going to need 2 6s. Now the way it worked out in loading this lock, there's no mushroom pins in it, because these are the ones that I have in my kit, and so it just happened to work out like that, but that's kind of unusual. Now this is a small pin kit that I have. This is the 5007 pin kit. It's a small kit. Doesn't have nearly as many pins in it. However, on the top pins, starting here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. On these, the numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all mushroom pins. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the 2 mushroom pins here, just so that we still have 2 mushroom pins in our lock. So that's how you pull your bottom pins, that's how you pull your top pins. Now the first couple of times that you rekey a Medeco lock, I would like to suggest that you take just your plug and your new key and make sure that all of your bottom pins are the right pins. Put them in there and make sure that they look correct. Once you get a little experience, you won't need to do that. You can just go ahead and put the lock together and drop your pins in there. But just to make sure you understand all of the concepts on how to pull the pins, that would be my suggestion to a person doing it for the first time. Grab the pin with your tweezers, and the way I do that, I lay it down and I try to roll it around so that the locator tab is up towards me, because the locator tab is on this side of the plug, and then I can just take it and drop it in there usually, and the locator tab will be lined up. So that looks pretty good. So you can see that the sidebar slots are all lined up perpendicular to where the sidebar goes, so that the legs of the sidebar can slide into those little slots. So we know we have the right pins. Now that we're sure that we have all of the correct bottom pins, we're going to go ahead and take the bottom pins back out of the plug, and we're going to load the plug back into the shell, and then we will drop the bottom pins into the chambers through the top of the shell. Okay, I want to point out a little ledge in the slider compartment to hold the spring, and it's very tiny, but at the back of the slider compartment, down just about halfway down into the compartment, there's a little ledge, and the spring is supposed to sit on the ledge. It's not supposed to go down deep into the compartment. So there's a couple of ways to load that. You're going to find out what works best for you. But Once you get the slider in there, make sure the spring's not down below the ledge. Okay, so the first thing we do is take our spring and put it into the slider. And take the plug, holding it up at an angle so you want the spring up so it doesn't fall out. Then put the slider in, spring first, but make sure that the spring is just barely below the surface of the plug. You don't want to put it in at a real steep angle. If I hold it real steep and put it in like this, it's going to go in too deep and be below the ledge. I want it really right here, just below the surface. And I can see that it's a little bit too high. I'm going to and it'll fly out of there and be gone very easily. I'm going to just take a probe and just move it down a little bit. Okay, so that's what it should look like. It's straight. The spring is straight out from the slider. If the spring is kind of angled down deep into the pocket, then you know that it's below the ledge. So this is how it should look, and it should work fine if you take your finger and push it up like so. So when you go to put your slider in, don't forget about the ledge that holds the spring up. Okay, that's the first step in building your lock back. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and put in the sidebar. I have the springs in the sidebar. The ball bearing is here on the front, going towards the front of the plug. I already have the slider in the plug. I'll take and line up the sidebar with that gap in the plug and put the plug right over the sidebar. Now the sidebar will not press all the way into the plug because the slider's in there. So I'm going to come over here and get a hold of the slider and push it up. And then I'm going to check and see if I push it up all the way. Okay, now my sidebar is working properly. And I'm going to let the sidebar back out. I'm going to let go of the slider. You heard it pop back just then. And now I'm going to take a key and put a key in there. And I want to see if the sidebar, again, you have to hold this a little bit because it could fly out on you. Let the key push the sidebar up, the slider up. And then see if your sidebar works okay with the key in there, and it does. Now you know you're ready to load the plug into the shell. So I'm going to let go of the sidebar very gently. I'm going to back the key off a little bit so there's no pressure from the key on the slider, and I'm going to set the whole thing down back on the workbench. My next step is going to be to load the hardened steel crescents into the front of the shell. Okay, now the way we're going to do that is we're going to grab them about down at the middle with our tweezers very gently. Don't squeeze them too hard because they will fly off on you. It's a very delicate touch. And we have one that goes a slot at the 12 o'clock position, and we have a slot at the 3 o'clock position. It doesn't matter which one you put in first. We'll put the one for the 12 o'clock. Just drop it in there and let it go, and it will fall pretty much into place like that. We'll do the same thing with the one at the 3 o'clock position. Just drop the tail of it in there, let go of it, and let it fall down in there. Now you want to keep the shell turned so that gravity is keeping those plates down in there. Now, with the other hand, grab the plug. Bring the plug up. Get the tail of it started into the shell. Now that will hold your crescents in place. They won't come out now. And this is kind of tricky. It may take some practice to do this, but push on your key, make sure it's all the way up in there. Your slider's forward. Once the slider's forward, the sidebar will recess completely into the plug. The whole thing can go in, and once it's in about halfway, you can go ahead and turn it around to the correct position. Just turn the shell around in your hand and gently slide the whole thing in there. Now that is a little tricky to start with. The next thing to do is make sure it's working okay. Now the plug will come back out, so I want to be careful as I take this key out, not to let the plug come out and my slider and sidebar go flying off and crescents fall out and I have to do it all again. So that's in there. Now the next thing we want to do is put our tailpiece back on there, so we know that we don't need to worry about that plug coming out any longer. So goes like that. Put our 2 screws back in it. Okay, now we're ready to load the pins in the lock. So we put the tailpiece on the back. Go ahead and put the key back in. Make sure that the plug turns okay. We know that the slider and the sidebar are working properly. And we're going to start by loading the number 1 chamber. Now the way I do it, I lay the pin down and I roll it a little bit until the indicator tab is up towards me. And that way when I drop it in here, it'll be in the right position to line up with the locator tab slot. Then I get my number 1. That was the number 4 pin. Our first chamber number 4. Now I get my number 4 top pin and drop it in there. And then I get my spring and drop it in there. And I can just put my finger on there to start with and check that. See that it still turns okay, and it does. So let's go ahead and put the set screw on number 1 chamber. Number 1 chamber's been rekeyed and ready to go. And once it's snug, that's it. You don't over tighten it. Okay, now we're ready for our number 2. Our number 2 chamber, we had a number 2 pin. And again, I'm going to take it and I'm going to roll it so that the locator tab is up. Drop it right into the number 2 chamber there. Then we're going to get our number 2 top pin and drop it in on top of it. We're going to get our spring. And again, now we're going to test again. Hold your finger on that spring, put your key in. Okay, we know everything is working properly. And we're going to just go through just like that and load all 6 chambers. And if you do it that way, you're not going to have any problems. If there's a problem, you're going to find it right away. If you accidentally pulled a wrong pin, it's possible the pins got mixed up in your pin kit. That pin got in the wrong bin. So if it gets in the wrong bin, your lock is not going to work. So you're going to have to identify that problem and replace that bottom pin. Okay, so that finishes loading number 6 chamber, and we're going to try our key and see if our key works, and it works smooth. Let's try the old key we had for it. It's not going to work. But that's how you rekey Medeco 3 lock. Same principle applies to the original lock and the biaxial lock. Of course, with the original lock, you don't have the biaxial pins, and with the biaxial lock, you do not have the slider. But the M3 has all of the features, and so if you can do the M3, then you can do the Medeco 3. You can do any of them. Now I'm not going to get into master keying in this video, but you saw the master pins in the pin kits, and you can master key a Medeco lock just like any other pin tumbler lock. But I do want to point out that they have different sliders available for master key programs. Notice that this part of this slider is not as thick as this here. This would be for master key only. Here, this could be for master key or change key because of this little slot right here. And then over here, this would be just for a change key only. And again, if you want to know more about that, you can just read the manual, and it will explain that in more detail. I want to show you this key lube by Medeco. They have their own key lube which they recommend for their locks. And by the way, if you don't use an approved lubricant on the Medeco locks, it will void the warranty. But it is very important that with all of these parts in the Medeco lock, it's very important that they be kept clean and lubricated. You can see the lube comes with the traditional straw to insert into the lock. And what the Medeco recommendation is that you insert the straw into the lock and then do 3 1-second bursts. So only 1 second, 3 times, and that's plenty of lubricant in the lock. Okay, I want to mention another lock that is covered in this manual is the Medeco bi-level lock. And the Medeco bi-level lock is recognizable from the front. It'll say, the logo will say M with a 3, but it will have a large B for bi-level after the 3. You will also notice that there's no UL stamp. On the Medeco M3, the regular M3, you have the UL stamp. The bi-level lock does not meet the UL 437 standards for a high security lock. And you can see here in the drawing, the main difference are the conical pins, and also we don't see the hardened steel pins and the crescents and so on in this lock. So it is not as drill resistant or as pick resistant, but it is still a very good lock. It has the sidebar in it, and it has the slider in it, and it's still a great lock, and it will work in a building where you're using the Medeco 3 lock. You can use the same key to operate both. And this lock could be used in less secure areas like storage cabinets, in that type of situation where the security is not quite as great, that you don't really need to pay for the Medeco 3 cylinder. Now, one issue I want to point out with this bi-level lock is that with the bottom pins being different, is going to require a new pin kit. Here's a better view of the bi-level pin. Again, this is in the Medeco manual. It shows the pin with the conical point, and notice that the groove for the sidebar is cut all the way around the pin. So the pin does not have to be rotated to accept the sidebar. Another issue with bi-level, which is pointed out in the Medeco manual regarding the cuts of the key, that with the bi-level pins and the bi-level locks, they were designed to only work with the aft cuts. So if they're going to be integrated into a Medeco 3 system and you want to use the same key for all of the locks, you're only going to be able to use pins in the aft position. You're not going to be able to use pins in the fore position. Now here's a better picture on the front of the manual, the Medeco manual, with the M3 logo and the UL stamp, and giving the series number of the lock. And the bi-level lock doesn't have the series, doesn't have the UL rating, just has the M3 with the large B beside it. Probably one of the most significant features of the Medeco lock is their ability to control the key blanks. Medeco 3 key blanks are patent protected until 2021. To obtain Medeco patent protected key blanks requires a contract with Medeco. However, it is not necessary to contract with Medeco for you to be able to sell and service many of their products. Medeco's original patent expired in 1986, and its biaxial patent expired in 2005. Therefore, a number of key blank manufacturers now offer the original and biaxial blanks. Key manufacturers will only produce blanks for the most common keyways. Therefore, it is quite possible that you will encounter Medeco locks for which you are unable to obtain the blanks except from Medeco. You can obtain Medeco 3 cut keys from distributors who participate in Medeco's distributor level program. So it is possible to work with all 3 generations of locks, at least in some capacity. We're going to take a look at the Ilco key blank directory to see what they have in here for Medeco key blanks. Okay, we have a number of blanks here. The Medeco section starts here, and we have, now these are the same profile, it's just for a 5-pin and a 6-pin. But we have, if we count all of them, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we have 2 other keys on the next page. So we have 11 key blanks that Ilco shows in their directory with the Ilco numbers for the keys. Now, one thing I do is I have a little ring of Medeco key blanks that are available from the key blank suppliers that I keep, and if I come across a Medeco lock with no key, I'll just check to see if one of these keys will fit that lock, and then if it does, I know I'm in business because I can simply order these from the key blank suppliers. But there's a lot of locks out there that you're not going to have blanks for a couple of reasons. One, Medeco still holds a patent on the key and does not make it available to the key blank suppliers. Or 2, the suppliers are simply not going to make that key blank because there's not enough demand for that particular blank. As you can see in the Medeco manual, and this starts on page 56 and it goes through page 76, that Medeco offers a number of programs for working with locksmiths, distributors, and end users. Some of the programs require a contract with Medeco, and some require the purchase of specific equipment. Now, we do not have time to go through all of these, but I want to mention a couple of the programs. Probably the easiest way for a small locksmith to participate with Medeco is through this D&D program, which is for distributors. And with this program, you simply contact a distributor that is doing this program with Medeco, and you can buy the products directly from the distributor. Now, the only thing is, again, is that they will not sell you the key blanks, that they will have to cut the keys themselves and then ship the keys to you already cut. But this, I think, is a very good program and allows even the smallest locksmith to participate with Medeco products. You can see here that the keys that we use to rekey the Medeco 3 lock with was part of the D&D program. I simply bought these keys and the card from the distributor. And the card, if the person that we sold this lock to wants to buy more keys, they'll need this card. And the card has the information on it as far as the biddings and cuts of the key and so on. And with the card, we could, and with the authorization of the end user, we could get them more key blanks. And again, we would have to go to the distributor to get those. The D&D program uses what's called a DL keyway. And so this is going to be a real common keyway because distributors have been selling these locks to many locksmiths and many customers for many years. So that's obviously one that is going to be quite common. For locksmiths with small and medium-sized shops, consider the Freedom Program. With the Freedom Program, the locksmith is provided with key blanks that identify them specifically. So on the back of the key, you could have your name, address, and phone number right on the back of the key blank. Now, this program does require a contract with Medeco and the purchase of a card reader and printer. It's also necessary, of course, to have a key machine that will cut the Medeco keys. For the exact cost of this program, contact a Medeco distributor. Let's review the ways to work with Medeco and their key blanks and their key control programs. One, you can work with the customer's existing keys. Two, some key blanks are available now from key blank suppliers. Three, you can work with the distributors and let them cut the key blanks. You can choose to participate in one of Medeco's key control programs. I want to take a few minutes and talk about some ways that you can make money with Medeco, even if you are not working for a large locksmith shop that is servicing some very large customers where the whole facility is a Medeco facility. There are ways that you can satisfy customers' demands with other products that Medeco has that you can purchase and you can sell. And in particular, I like to carry a couple of mortise cylinders for storefront operators, where small stores, you go in and the owner says, you know, I really have a problem with people making unauthorized keys. Is there any way that you can put a lock on here so they can't go out and make a key? And as soon as you hear that, you want to think about Medeco as one example of a lock where you can sell that to them and stop that unauthorized duplication of keys. This is an easy sell. If you go to a storefront, they got one storefront door with 2 cylinders on it. You simply sell them 2 cylinders and get the number of keys that they need, and you're in business. Now, if you don't have but the 2 keys for the lock, you can go ahead and order more keys. Even if you can't cut them yourself, you can go ahead and order some more keys and get them some more keys within just a few days by working with your distributors. You can get, of course, Medeco deadbolts for both either residential or commercial. Same thing where you have a customer that is concerned about maybe picking, drilling, as well as unauthorized duplication of key. The deadbolts are available to you. And there are many retrofit products that Medeco makes that you can buy and sell to make money with Medeco. One example would be the cam lock. Same situation. The customer wants more security with an item protected by a cam lock. Those are available to you with several different tail pieces that will come with that lock. But one in particular, I want to go ahead and show to retrofit either a deadbolt or knob or lever handle lock. Medeco does make these retrofits for other manufacturers of locks. And in particular, I want to focus here on, just as an example, I'm going to show you that you can change out a Schlage deadbolt with a Medeco lock cylinder. Okay, so here we have a Schlage deadbolt, standard type deadbolt that I'm sure you're familiar with. Has the tailpiece, standard tailpiece on the back. It's held, the lock cylinder is held in there by one screw. And just pull that out of there and show you how easy it is to change that from a Schlage keyway to accept the Medeco. Now this comes with a number of tail pieces and has break-off points on the long tail piece, but if it's a single deadbolt or double cylinder deadbolt, you have the tail pieces in there for different ones. But it's just a matter of changing it out just like that. Put the screw back in there, and instead of a Schlage keyway, you now have a Medeco keyway, and you can integrate that into maybe you have a master key system with Medeco keyway, and you want to integrate with that system. And that's all there is to it. Now you have Schlage deadbolt. It's a Schlage right there. Medeco M3 keyway and lock cylinder in that lock. I want to look at this little cam lock for just a minute, just to familiarize you with it. That this has the biaxial logo here, and so we know it's a biaxial lock. it is different in that all of the pins are, everything is contained within the plug. And I'm going to just pull it out here and show it to you. And this does require a different pin kit. These are different pins and requires a different pin kit to work on these cam locks. So you can see here the spring cover plate on top of the plug, and everything is inside. The top pins, the bottom pins, the springs, everything is inside the plug. So it's a little different. It's a very good lock. It has the sidebar here. And this is the only locking point on the cam lock, because the top pins don't penetrate the plug. They're inside here, so they can't be a locking point. The locking point is the sidebar. But you can see that it has the hardened steel pins in the front of the plug, and again at the 3 o'clock position, and it's a very good lock. This is a 72 series lock. I'm going to use the Intermountain lock catalog. I could have used other suppliers. I just happened to have this handy, so I grabbed it. But we're going to look at some of the Medeco products here quickly to, again, just let you know kind of what is available that you can order and work with the Medeco lock systems. You see you can order deadbolts, both single cylinder and double cylinder. They have padlocks down here in the corner. Cam locks. On this page you can see there are mortise cylinders, and you can get these also in the biaxial as well as the Medeco 3. If you're working with the biaxial keyway, you can still order these in biaxial, but they have these different kits for. This is a knob cylinder kit. This is another knob. This is knob and lever for Schlage. Here's for key-in knob, Schlage key-in knob, 6-pin. So you can pick these up, maybe carry a few with you on your van, and if not, you can, once you have a customer, you can order those. Now you're going to be working. If you're going to just order from the distributor, you're going to be working with their keyway. It's a DL keyway. And I really think that's ideal for a small locksmith to just simply work with the DL keyway and let the distributor cut the keys for you and everything if you need additional keys. You can buy just the keys and the card. So you have a customer, maybe they got 4 or 5 locks in their store that you've sold to them or Medeco, and they want you to rekey that lock. You can just order the key. Get with your distributors, tell them if you need 8 keys, whatever it is, tell them you need 8 keys, and they'll explain to you what you need to do to get those 8 keys sent to you, and you'll have them probably within 2 or 3 business days. You should have those keys, and you can go rekey that business. Now you can carry these with you. I don't normally order more than just the 2 keys, so that if the customer wants to rekey something immediately, it's an emergency, I can go ahead and I can rekey it. I got 2 keys right there, and they can usually get by with that for a day or 2 until I get additional keys. But that's just a very simple way to work with Medeco with the distributor level program. There's no buy-in to it. You simply just order the materials and go install them. One of the problems with the Medeco original biaxial and the Medeco 3 lock is that they do not come in the small format interchangeable core. Now they are available in the large format, but if you're working with a company that has a lot of small format interchangeable core locks, they're probably not going to want to change all of them. And so one alternative for key control is to work with Medeco's lock called Keymark. The Keymark keyways are patented and provide a great deal of control over key duplication, and it's a very good lock. It does not carry the rating for the high security lock, but it still is a very good lock. So this is an alternative if you have a customer with a small format that is very interested in control of the key blanks and key duplication and so on. This is Medeco's product catalog, and I would recommend that you try to get one of these catalogs. You can actually download this from their website, or if you could contact a rep, I'm sure they would be glad to send you one. Distributors may also have a few of these in stock that they can ship out. But the catalog tells all about all their different products, and they have a great many products. We were only able to discuss just a few of their products in this course today. But to know what all is available, even with the locks that we discussed, it'd be a good idea to try to pick up one of these catalogs. And again, as you can see, it has all of their products in here, what the features of each one of the locks is, and a little bit about the application and so on. So that's the Medeco product catalog. Another way that you could make some money with Medeco locks would be, and this has happened to me a few times, I would come out to a rekey building, and they would have Medeco locks, and just let's say for an example it's a storefront, maybe they got 2 storefront doors for a total of 4 cylinders, and they already have Medeco mortise locks on them, and he wants you to rekey it. Well, they have their own key already, and so one thing we could do, especially like on this key where there's some pretty high cuts here still, we could simply get all the keys that they have and cut that down to another depth and cut all the keys the same, then rekey the locks, and basically it would be just like a normal rekey. Now to do that does require some way to cut the key. You can cut these on your HPC 1200 code machine. It does require a 1012 cutting wheel, and also you're going to need to invest in a different block for the code machine. This is the C block. Normally the code machine only comes with the AB block, and this is the C block, which will hold the Medeco keys. It has a groove that will really secure the keys real well. The Medeco keys are real hard metal keys compared to other keys, and you need to have them very securely fastened onto your machine there to the vise before you begin to cut it. So that's why you need to make the additional investment for the proper holding block to hold the key in the vise. So we're going to go ahead and go to our key machine, and we're going to notch this down. I'm going to show you how to do it. Now on this particular key here, this very last cut here, we're going to take it down just for demonstration purposes. We're going to take that down one more depth, and you can see that is a right cut. It's a right angle cut. But the HPC 1200 will adjust to make that cut, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Number 5 cut is a 2. The number 6 cut is a 3. So we can take that down to a 4 without any problems. But you want to remember when you do this not to violate your max guide. The number 5 and the number 6 cuts are right angle cuts. So again, looking on my key gauge, we have a 4 cut that's right angle, and we have a 6 cut that's right angle. So we have a Q and an S. And we need to check our book and make sure that we'll be okay with that cut. We can see that if we have a Q and an S, the max is 2. So we can go one more down to a 4 without being any problem. Okay, so since we got a 2 and a 3 on these last two cuts, we can go down to a 4 to make it a 2 and a 4, and we're not going to violate our max rule by doing that. So we're going to go ahead and take this to the van, and I'm going to show you how to set up your HPC 1200 code machine and cut that key. Okay, you notice here it says right or left, and there's a pin here that you can pull. You pull the pin out and you can rotate the cutter head either right or left. You just rotate it till the pin goes back in a slot, and that's it. That's the right. If you want to go to the left, of course you would simply go the other way, like so. So this machine will, given the correct cutter wheel and so on, you can cut your biaxial keys on a 1200 machine. Here we got our key tightened up in this using the C jaw. It's good and tight in the vise. We use the normal shoulder gauge. It is really important that everything be right on, that your machine be really cutting right to spec to cut these keys. But normally, if your machine's set up right and it hadn't been knocked out of alignment or anything, it's right on, you can cut these keys with no problem. We have the head already turned to the right position, and we have the right card in the key machine to cut this. On the key machine, if we look up here, we can see that the card shows 12 cutting positions, fore and aft for 1 through 6. So each of the 6 positions to cut, the 6 cuts, there's 2 possible cut positions. Now, we were going to cut a 4 cut on the number 6 cut, and we're going to take it down from a number 3 to a number 4. So we would go to the 4 cut, number 6 4 cut, and let's go ahead and bring the key up and see if everything looks right. And it looks like it's very close. I think we're not going to have any problem with this cut. So we're going to go ahead and cut that down from a 3 to a 4. Now it looks good. There's our new cut right here. It looks like it's right on. You can see if it would have went any deeper, it would have taken out the number 5 cut. So on this particular scenario, we only had a max of 2. Okay, here's our key with the new cut here on the number 6 position. You see, we could also reduce number 5 down, and it would be better really to change more than just the one cut. Take the 5 down one more notch, and there's some other ones here that we could change by 1 cut also if we wanted to. And truthfully, I probably would change at least 2 of the cuts. The other thing that I always do is if I'm going to just modify the existing keys, I discuss that with the owner of the building, the person that owns the locks and the keys, and I explain that, this is one option, and we probably could do it faster and we could save some money maybe by doing it like this. It would be more secure to go ahead and order all new keys with a total new set of cuts and rekey the locks for like a normal rekey operation, and then I let the owner of the business decide what they want to do. The HPC card for the Medeco Biaxial is the CSP3. The Medeco card for the original Medeco was C36, and it just says Medeco Standard on it. Then if you need a card for the Medeco cam locks, the biaxial cam locks, that card's also available. It's the CSP4. We're going to look at Medeco mortise cylinder, and we're going to drill this to open this lock. But I want to first off show you a couple of things here about this lock. Notice that one thing is, I think, interesting is the shape of the sidebar. I'll just hold this up to the camera. We're going to zoom in on this, but you know, if you're familiar with sidebar locks, you'll know that most sidebar locks are square on the edge that fits into the shell to stop that from turning. The way this works is that if there is clearance for the legs to go into the plug, if there's nothing blocking these, the sidebar does not just automatically recess. The sidebar recesses from the turning pressure of the key. And that's the reason why it's angled off. So that if we want to drill this lock, if we can move everything out of the way that blocks the legs, then the sidebar should turn by itself, and we shouldn't have to worry about drilling the sidebar. Okay, now to drill this lock, normally the normal procedure is to drill right up here at the shear line, take out the shear line, and then to drill the sidebar. And remember, the sidebar is 90 degrees over. It's right in this location right here. I have also had success by putting a key in here and pushing these pins up, and then drilling right up here at the top of the lock, and then completely drilling these pins away to where they no longer blocked the sidebar, and then be able to open the lock. And so that's what we're going to attempt to do first. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is identify our drill point, which we said was going to be right above the keyway. Not exactly center between the top of the keyway and the shear line. I'm going to go just a tiny bit past center going up. So anything between that is center between the top of the keyway and the shear line, but it could be just a little bit higher, would be okay. Okay, now we're going to need some way to hold these pins up, because like I said, what we're going to try to do here is just drill the pins away from this sidebar. So I tried a number of different keys, and depending on the keyway you're working with, you're going to have to just do some trial and find out what key you'll work with. This is a LG L54G. The blade of this key is not quite long enough to go all the way to the back, and so I'm going to take it to my grinder, and I'm going to just grind off some of this, and I'm going to get a piece that I can stick in there and hold those pins up. So what I'm saying is that this blade is not long enough to reach the back pins in this lock. So I'm going to grind off the shoulders of this on both bottom and top, and I'm going to get a piece of metal here that will be long enough to go all the way to the back of the lock. Okay, so you can see I've ground off these shoulders so that now the blade of this key is long enough to go all the way into the back of the keyway to hold up all 5 pins. Now the problem we have now, of course, is the bow is in the way of us drilling right there. So now I'm going to cut the bow off. Okay, so we can see now that I've cut the blade off of this, and I've tried to get as much of the blade as I can, taking even the shoulders off, so that we can stick this in this plug and get it as far as we can to hopefully push up the pins in all 5 chambers. Now I'm going to put a little piece of duct tape over that, just to hold that so that as we start drilling it, it doesn't vibrate loose. I've also put a piece of duct tape on my drill bit so that I know how far to drill this in. Now obviously, if this is in the door, you're going to have to just guess, whether it's 1 inch or 1 1/8 inch. This is a 5 pin lock, and so about 1 inch drilling in is going to do it, but there's not much room at the end of the lock, so we want to be careful about not drilling off the tail piece off of the plug. So we want to mark the bit somehow, either a real good permanent marker or a piece of tape or something to mark your bit as to how far you're going to drill. You know, this is a 5/32 bit. It's a carbide tip bit, and we're going to go ahead now and we're going to try to drill this as straight as we possibly can, right where we marked it at. Okay, now you remember in the front of this lock we have those 3 hardened steel pins, but you're going to see that they're really no match for a carbide bit. Yeah, I think right about there we just went through the 3 hardened steel pins. Now it did throw my bit slightly off of center, so I'm going to try to move the hole if I can a little bit back. You know, what we're drilling through now is that hardened steel crescent that's protecting the 12 o'clock position. And we should be through that fairly quickly here. Okay, I'm in about halfway, so in just that short amount of time, we went through the 3 hardened steel pins, we went through the steel crescent, and we're in about 2 chambers already. So now I'm all the way in to my tape here. I'm all the way into my tape, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a pick and try to clean everything out and see what all was in here. Okay, so we're going to use our pick. This is actually a key extractor. I'm going to just go up here and see if I can get anything else out of there. There's nothing coming down. There's a good hole there. And sometimes once you pull the drill bit out, you know, some of the pins will push down a little bit and block the hole again, but it appears that they've stayed up in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off, this duct tape off of here. I'm going to take this piece out of here. And then we're going to check and see again if there's anything up. And I still feel nothing in there. There's nothing down below here blocking. So now we're going to just take and see if we can turn this. And it's not wanting to release. So I'm going to drill that again. I'm going to put the little piece of metal back in. And I'm going to put a little piece of tape over it. And we're going to drill through there again. just check it. I'm going to shoot some WD-40 in there just to wash it out. Okay, so we're going to see what we got here. We're going to wash the bottom of it out a little bit. And let's see if it'll turn. Okay, so it doesn't want to turn, so we're going to put that back. Now we're going to go to a 1/4 inch bit and drill the top with a 1/4 inch bit. Okay, so we have a 1/4 inch bit chucked up, again a carbide bit with a piece of tape on it. We're going to just go ahead and make this hole a little bigger here. Okay, same thing, we're going to check and see if we got debris in here. We're going to go ahead and take our extra little piece of metal out of there. We're going to wash it out with some WD-40. We'll check again and see if I feel anything at all in there. And there are some pieces in there, which is what's causing the problem. And so we may have to, if the little pieces get down and we can't get them out, we may have to drill the sidebar. So let's see if we can get them out of there using this key extractor. I don't really see that. There's still, I think, a piece of pin up in here maybe. Okay, let's try that. Now, if we got all the chips out of there, we should be able to go ahead and turn this plug if we didn't damage the gates or the legs on the sidebar. And I don't believe we did. I think we're going to be good to go with this. So just grab it with a pair of channel locks, and I'm not going to be able to see that real well. I'll try it like this to get the channel locks down here. Big screwdriver, pair of channel locks, just like you do with drilling mini locks, and just go ahead and turn it. And you can see that it's coming around. That turning pressure will force that sidebar up into the plug. And so that's it. That's how to drill a Medeco lock. Okay, this is the lock that we just drilled, and we're going to go and take it apart and just see what exactly happened in there. What we're going to do then is we're going to just go ahead and take everything out and just see what the condition of it is. You can see it didn't hurt the spring in the first one at all, and there's really nothing else left in there. So we're going to just do each one of those. Again, there's the spring. There is a little piece of the top pin in that one. In fact, there's two little pieces in there. And so that was the number 4 chamber. This is the number 3 chamber. There's a spring, and there's the top pin, and I don't see anything else in there. So that's all of that one. But the top pin was totally intact on that. This is the second one. Again, here's the spring, and there are pins. Let's get everything out of the way so we can see what's left in there. You can see the top pin, and that's it. There's no indication that any of the bottom. So the bottom pin you see is completely drilled away in the way that I do this, and that's what my total intent is to just drill them out of there. Okay, the top pin fell out of that one also, and that looks like it's it. So the plug should come out of there. Here it is. And you can see that the top part of the plug is totally drilled away. But the sidebar is still right there. Now if you look right here, you can see the sidebar legs right along this side here. Sidebar is right there, and you can see those sidebar legs sticking through there. So you can see that by drilling those pins out of the way, it'll come through. Now notice how I tried to stay above the gates with my hole, and I just barely did that. So I like to go with a 5/32 bit if I can, no bigger than that. We used a 1/4 bit on here, but you want to start high on the plug. That's what I was saying, that between the top of the keyway and the shear line, maybe a little bit more towards the top than the middle, just 1/8 of an inch or so, to give yourself a little room to avoid hitting this gate area. If you take a close look here, you can see that the gates are not damaged. You can see that they're all nice and open. Okay, I wanted to show you also the steel crescents. That the one at 3 o'clock, of course, is still perfect. We didn't touch it. And the one here at 12 o'clock, you can still see parts of it are still embedded in the shell of the lock. You can see a little bit here, I think, and then right here. But of course we drilled right through there, so we drilled out basically the center of the steel crescent. Looking at the back of the shell, you can see where I just started to penetrate the very back part of the shell. And that's basically what you have to do to be able to get that on this 1-inch mortise, this 5-pin mortise. To be able to get that last pin drilled through, you have to come right to the edge of the shell, just like that. Now if it's a Medeco 3 lock, because it's going to have the slider in there blocking that sidebar, we're going to have to go ahead and drill for the sidebar. You know this lock will open, but I'm going to just go ahead and drill this sidebar just so that I'm certain that everyone knows how to do it. But we know that the sidebar is right at the top of the keyway and clear over to the edge of the plug. Like I said, we're going to start right there. With the 5/32 carbide bit. Now again, as I went through that steel pin, it tried to push my drill bit off center, and it did push it off center. And you can see I had to maneuver the drill to get the hole back where I wanted it. So you can see with a good carbide bit, that's pretty simple to drill through. I need to go ahead and put a piece of tape on my bit here to make sure I don't drill too far. Now actually, in drilling the sidebar, if you were to drill clear through the lock, it probably would not hurt anything because the tailpiece should still stay on the back of the plug since we're clear off to one side. But just to be sure, it's always a good idea to go ahead and mark your bit and make sure you don't go too far with it. Okay, so I went ahead and put a piece of tape on my bit about 1 1/16 of an inch. And that's it. We're all the way through that sidebar. And of course we knew in this case that this plug would already turn. And this should turn even easier now. And it does. I can turn it with just a screwdriver pretty easy. So we're going to take this out and we'll look at what happened. But had this been a Medeco 3 and it didn't turn, then I would have went ahead and drilled this with a larger bit using a 1/4 inch carbide bit. So here you can see that we got clear back to the very back edge of this plug, stopped just about perfect. Took out the whole top half of the sidebar. The bottom half of the sidebar is still in there, and that's why you cannot see the gates in the plug any longer, because the bottom half of the sidebar is still there. But that's what it looks like. And there's our top hole and there's our side hole. So you can see it's not that difficult to drill a Medeco lock if you have a good carbide bit. For practice, try to obtain some Medeco locks and take them apart and put them back together again. Go to the Medeco website and study all of their products. Their website features a number of resources to help new locksmiths learn about their products. That concludes this video. We want to thank you for buying this video, and we hope you found it informative. Please visit our website at www.locksmithdvd.com and review our other videos.